All right, Bad Publicity here with a brand new segment for you guys. This is the October Power Rankings. We've put out the feelers, and I've been reading this blog for a long time. It's called Sneak Door Melbourne. I'll probably get butchered later for my pronunciation. Melbourne, Miles. What is that's right?
No,
Melbourne.
yeah, it's great. I'm enjoying this.
So, guys, we'd just like to introduce Miles to the team here. He's been running power rankings for how long have you been doing this for exactly?
About 4 months.
4 months. I've loved it. I've read every one. I like to see the community grow with things like this, and I think to bring a bigger spotlight on this. I think our community needs it. I know I always compare card communities, and I model a lot of our stuff after what Hearthstone does, and I love reading the Hearthstone meta snapshots that Tempo Storm does. So, if we can bring something like this to Netrunner, I think it's phenomenal, and I love anything that brings up controversy and discussion. So, I mean, this is this is a couple guys, mostly Miles, your opinions here. So, I mean, we're not saying you're 100% right, but I say you're pretty damn close most of the time. So, so why don't you talk about what we're going to do here for the power rankings? How do you get these rankings first?
Okay, so what I do is I go through the Netrunner DB and StimHack listings. So StimHack's got the tournament winning deck list section. So does Netrunner DB. Excuse me. What I tend to do is just go through, count up what's happening, see if I can plot out the overall trends. So I've got a big spreadsheet where I keep track of everything. There's a couple of other sources as well, but they're the big ones. And also just keeping track of what's happening in my meta and what seems to be happening in the global and online meta as well.
Yeah, so it's not just you going to your local game store and looking at what everybody's playing, right? You're actually putting some analysis around the globe behind
definitely.
this.
Yeah, definitely.
Since this is your first time here, why don't you talk about let people get to know you and what level of Netrunner you play. Are you a very competitive player, or are you just here for the fun of it?
No, look, I consider myself pretty competitive, so I won a bunch of game night kits and stuff. I haven't won nationals or anything like that, but I usually do pretty well in those kind of events. I do consider myself quite competitive.
And what kind of style is your play?
I'm all about the rush, all about it. So NEH all day long.
From a runner side, have you been loyal to one faction, or are you across the board?
Look, I do love my shapers. I've been mucking around with Faust Gabe lately. That's pretty awesome. Like that a lot. But yeah, I love my Kate.
Old school.
Yeah.
You've been in the game since it broke, or are you fairly new
Since a bit before Creation and Control got into it, but didn't start sort of competing until a bit before Honor and Profit.
Nice. So you're I guess that's a veteran.
I guess so.
Veteran status.
I remember pre-Jackson days. Let's just say that.
So anyone that can say that struggled through those days is definitely a wily vet in my book. Yeah. All right. So talking about tiers, and this episode, we've ranked everything either tier 1, 2, and 3, and you've taken a snapshot from that perspective right now. Do you just want to talk about how each tier works, and just kind of give a definition or an explanation behind what makes a tier 1 deck, what's tier 3, and what are those decks that we're just not looking at? Like this is total power rankings from a high competitive level of play, right?
Yeah, raw power. Yeah.
So talk about your tier structure. I know that if people read the blog, you've always said, this is the snapshot, you give your brief introduction and you talk about the tier explanation. So I thought that would be a good segue here.
Sure. So what I consider to be tier 1 are the decks that have a really definite game plan. So something like, NEH, where you go, right, I'm going to score Astros, and everything of the deck is geared towards doing that really, really efficiently. Something like, fast draw biotics, obviously that's the thing. You've got your asset economy to help you draw the cards. You've got your Sands, biotic labors, daily business show to help you dig. It's all geared towards one specific thing. Tier 2 would be the decks that are strong, but maybe they've got, I'd consider most kill decks to be tier 2, just because they typically are a bit more reliant on the run and making a mistake. Butcher Shop's an exception because that's got such a serious and easy to pull off game plan. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah, cool. So, and also the ones that are maybe more reliant on, you've built this deck or you've played it a ton. It's not going to be something you can just pick up and play necessarily.
Perfect.
And tier 3 would be like stuff that's kind of around but not really, and maybe it occasionally hits a tournament, but they tend to be a bit more janky or a bit more unproven.
Right, and I think you've spoken to me offline and said these sometimes are very meta dependent.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, somebody knows they're going into a tournament where everyone's going to bring this one NEH rush, and at the time, this tier 3 deck has potential to bust the meta a bit, but it's not something that's going to reliably see consecutive wins against anything else.
Exactly. So in that example, it'd be like Wizard with 3 Clot and 3 Hacktivist Meeting or something like that. It works really well in this one place.
Totally. Okay, perfect. Anything else to say about your tier structure before we dive into the actual decks here?
Yeah, so I'm a bit conservative with it because a lot of people, do give me a bit of flack for it. But typically I don't put anything up to tier 1 unless it's really solidly proven and wins a ton of stuff.
Right. And I'm sure you welcome open discussion. I've seen the Reddit posts and stuff like that. So, if you guys out there don't agree with this, jump on somewhere where this video is or somewhere and, be prepared to, Miles is prepared to defend his choices. He's not putting these blindly out there like we've said.
That's right.
So we're going to do corporations first.
Sure, let's do it.
So here's our breakdown so far. We're looking at tier 1 decks. We have the sponsorship NEH, and we have the Turtlebacks variant. We have Near Earth Hub Butcher Shop and the HB Fast Advance Rush. So, which one of these would you like to talk about first? Should I just go?
Well, let's go with the NEH stuff because I think that's one of the things that's really changed out of the latest pack with Universe of Tomorrow.
Yeah, so let's preference. Sorry, this is pre-Data and Destiny.
Yes. Yeah.
So most of you that have poked around the community this last week know that StimHack held their Psy Games tournament. That kind of stuff is not reflected in these numbers yet. That will be following the next one, and we will. There's not much that's changed though. Both of us followed that tournament pretty closely, and apart from 1 or 2 cards, this is pretty much the shape going into Worlds right now.
Absolutely.
So sponsorship NEH and Turtlebacks variants. So what are we looking at here? The sponsorship NEH, you gave the 5th place NZ Nationals NEH Astrobiotics as the example.
Yep.
What's so special about this deck here?
Well, the key thing here is the 2 biotic labor that I would say sets it apart. So you've got 10 assets rather than the 13 or 12, 13, 14 that you'd see in the Turtlebacks version. So there's a couple of main differences. If you're running, some decks are running 4 1-pointers. That's kind of a big thing to get more team sponsorship triggers. This deck's less focused on that. It's more of a traditional NEH shell with the 3-team sponsorship added in.
Nice. And then going into the Turtlebacks version, we look at some of the ices has changed up here. This is the gas pedal version that Spags ran during the GLC that was happening in Chicago.
Yep. And this is the personal pick for the most fun deck in Netrunner.
Spag's obviously a good player, and he's piloted this very well that day. And this is the breakdown that we're starting to see is turtlebacks in there making the economy. And I have seen a couple variations where people do play with the archer to architect ratio now. People are defending that up, and I know talking with Scott afterwards, he was pretty leery on the archer run going forward.
Yeah, I think that's part of the because you've got the 1-pointers happening. You've got 3 breaking news, 1 future is now in this list. In future, that's going to become a 15 minutes, no question. And having 1-pointers does make Archer a lot more palatable.
Right. So these pretty much these 2 NEH variants here. Obviously, the turtlebacks way more popular right now, and they're singing. They're winning games. These are the top of the tier that you'll see at most tournaments. And I think our buddy Hollis has predicted an NEH world finish.
Yeah, I agree.
Next up, you have included the Butcher Shop version as also a tier 1. As an example, we have the Mac Top 8 NEH Trap Shop.
And that's an interesting one.
Why does this deserve a top tier spot?
Because when Film Critic came out, everyone went, right, Butcher Shop's dead, it's never coming back. Okay? The thing is that doesn't mean that people are actually playing Film Critic. And the other thing is that this deck is a bit interesting because it's got your Dune bugs and stuff like that in it, so it's taking a bit of a different in Ghost Branch. So this is quite interesting because it's someone's response to Film Critic, where they put in all these alternate ways of tagging and getting the kill off. The other thing is that a lot of Butcher Shop decks are taking in Sea Source now, which makes it a lot easier to land that kill.
What do you think that we'll see at Worlds? Do you think a lot of people will bring a Butcher Shop style deck, or are we more likely to see the typical NEH fast advance style like the turtlebacks?
I think there might be a pretty even split just because 24/7 news cycle exists, and that card is insane. Because if you can just go, right, you have 2 tags now, bang bang, that's a big deal.
Yeah. I haven't even wrapped my head around what that card's going to do to the game, but I've already seen some combo flaming on the message boards.
Yeah, exactly. Well, second place in the side games was the Harpsichord deck that's got that combo in it. And I've been trying it out online, and it's just absolutely ludicrous. You just get, you smash out 2 breaking news, and then you just dig for Scourge, and you go, okay, you're dead, thanks for playing,
This is definitely a deadly deck, and Butcher Shop has been around for a while now. So it's definitely going to be out there. You're going to see people run it. I'm not sure if we will see it in the top 8 or top 16, as most of those decks are the typical fast advance ones that we see. We don't see really a lot of kills.
And this has a reputation for sort of smashing through Swiss but not doing so well in top 8, because good players so rarely die to a mid-seasons or C-Source. You're only going to get them on your breaking news plays with AstroScript tokens, Sand, stuff like that.
Right. So I mean, if and I think that's exactly right. So if you want to just get a playmat and go home, feel free to run a Butcher Shop deck. But because like you said, I've seen this dominate in Swiss before. But when it comes to top cuts and things like that, it's very, very hard to land kills against veteran players.
Yeah, and one of its strengths as well is the ability to sort of masquerade as the fast advanced version. You don't necessarily know what you're going up against, and once you do know that, it loses a bit of its teeth.
Yeah, that's so true. Word travels around quickly who's running what deck during a tournament day. So once that surprise is gone and people aren't feeling it out, if I sit against the table from an NEH, pretty much 99% of the time I'm expecting just a straight fast advance these days. So, but it definitely belongs where it is, where you've ranked it. The next one is a point of discussion where some
Mm,
people sometimes they don't think it belongs near the top.
yeah.
HB Fast Advance. This when piloted well and put in the right hands of the right player, I've seen HB do good things recently.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're back with a vengeance. You've ranked this top tier, and this is the German nationals one that we're looking at. It took second place overall in the 2015 nationals here. What makes this so top tier?
Okay, so there's a few factors here. Number one, I think, is it's almost got that prepaid cake thing where it doesn't really have bad matchups. It doesn't necessarily have devastatingly stompy matchups, but it doesn't really have bad matchups. So I think that's a factor. The other one is that it has quite good matchups against prepaid Kate and Noise because you can play the never advanced games with Adonis campaigns, Eve campaigns, stuff like that, and you can pack two Cyber X virus suites relatively easily. And because you're HB, you have infinite money and gigantic ice. Or when I say gigantic ice, I mean very taxing ice that's going to be difficult to deal with over and over again for the runner.
What are you seeing this like the ratio of this deck popping up these days? Do you think people need to really consider HB as a threat on the board now?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I think it's really strong.
Any particular reason, or is it just like because I noticed this? We're not. I don't see team sponsorship in this one here, but I've seen HB use team sponsorship. I mean, it's in faction, so
Yeah, the jury's still out on whether it's better than Archive Memories in that deck. Because, obviously you can recur your Sands, Adonis's Eve, stuff like that. That's really strong. You might want to pull a Biotic Labour back. So they tend to be fighting for the same slot. It's not as out and out insane as it is in NEH because you don't have access to Astra scripts, so you can't do those massive score combos. But the never advance aspect and having Ash in faction as well just tends to mean you've got quite a good game against Kate Noise. Plus you have access to Eli, obviously, which is still probably the best dice in the game against Criminal and Anarch runners. You've got Itchy, which is fantastic against Noise, and obviously Architect as well. So you've got 9 ice slots filled with something really, really strong in faction already.
Yeah, their choices are really nice.
Turing as well.
I mean, HB's using a lot of their bread and butter cards in the ice. They don't have to go outside of faction to pull in some of these good staple ice that everyone else has to borrow from them.
Yeah, exactly.
So when like you said, when you're looking at the Turing, the Architect, the Eli, and then also in faction, rocking the Archive Memories, rocking the Biotic Labor, Ash has pretty much been a staple. It's
It's all your influence is basically luxury,
exactly right. The icing on the cakes, right? Putting in those sands and obviously Jackson Howard Daily Business Show just to speed up things here. I really like where HB is, and I like that this version of HB is coming to the forefront. We're not seeing when you think of HB as in HB of the past, it's been Glacier, right? The taxing redcoats or some kind of version of that coats deck that Nordrunner put out there back in the day. So it's nice to see them branch off. I mean, it'd still be nice to see somebody do something with HB that's not engineering the future, but I mean, this ID is still so dominant, right? Like this is one of the core set IDs that are always going to be there because that benefit helps in any style of HB that you're playing. This fast advance, I'm going to install and I'm going to get a buck off it. So
you win games.
Basically, HB wins games. So that's your tier 1 list. Pretty straight and simple, cut and dry. Getting into the gray zone, this is where some people might think that some decks belong a little higher, some decks might not belong here. You're looking at the tier 2, an RP Rush.
Yeah, so I've sort of reconsidered that actually. I'm not entirely sure about that one, but I think it's the only viable way to play RP right now. Because RP Glacier is just dead in the water.
Yeah, pretty much.
It doesn't exist. No one's playing it. It's gone. It's out.
It went from being everywhere to being nowhere.
That's right. Noise apocalypse has come and it's just gone.
So this is the reference you give is the Bizarre RP Rush deck, aka Tampa Rush. So, like, where did you pick up this one? Like, what makes this one tier 2 and not a tier 1 deck?
Because you have to win side games or you lose.
That's it. There you have it. There you have it. Yeah. Is it this one doing anything special? Have you seen any other versions of this HP RP Rush?
Yeah, there's been biotech decks floating around for a while. I put up a biotech Rush deck a while ago, and it's a similar thing. You just use binary ice. You try and get a Caprice, Quandary Himitsubako, for example, scoring server up quickly. You try and rush Nisei's out, and you just have to try and go really quickly, basically. And half the time you end up leaving your centrals open and just relying on your future perfects and APDs to look after themselves.
I like this. I like thinking RP in a different way than what we've seen. Different styles of deck building. I think most people that follow Bad Publicity know that I kind of float around tier 2, 3, possibly some weird janky tier 4, but I love just different deck buildings, and when I can see somebody put together something that is a little interesting, that can actually bring something to the table viably different, all the respect to them. So it's nice to see something like this creeping up out there. Going along, we have the Jinteki Personal Evolution Flatline. This is something that's not new. This deck here, as an example, is the Bag of Tricks version 2. This one undefeated in the Nordic Nationals, 6-0. But we're not, we're not.
Took down Australian Nationals too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's not something that's new to the table. It's I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Personal evolution is something that goes on the shelf for a bit until somebody is like, you know what, I don't want to play NEH anymore, and they bring this deck back to the table, and everyone then all of a sudden goes, yeah, that is a good deck. I forgot about this. But
I think it's exactly it's a deck that benefits from meta games, I think, same as Argus. So you sort of saw it because it dropped out of favor right after Order in Chaos came out, because you've got your I've Had Worse, and that was in every deck ever for a while there. So it dropped out of favor, but just as we've sort of moved along through the cycle, Deus Ex has dropped out of decks, I've Had Worse has dropped out of decks, and as a result, P's become stronger again.
I think that's a good point that you raised there. We talked about that. Hollis was talking about it in the last one about when we were deconstructing Kate decks, and we're saying that Deus Ex is just not making the cut like it used to. People are putting the sharpshooter in there to handle the different ice, because we're not seeing a lot of needs to fight the Jinteki damage decks like they used to. So every once in a while one comes along that surprises us. So why do you think this one would be not a tier 1 deck?
It ultimately still relies on the runner stuffing up or making a mistake. I think that is what is going to hold it back.
Yeah, that's been the Jinteki fallback the whole time. A good Jinteki pilot can really take it to you, knowing when to press damage and when to actually just concentrate on scoring agendas. But
it's pilot dependent. Like someone like Min, who took second place in Worlds last year. That's another story, because he just plays the absolute hell out of this deck and he knows how to actually score if he has to. But the majority of people can't do it.
Yeah. It's still really interesting to see, because when he came to Worlds last year, the UK meta and the other side of the world played Jinteki like crazy, and he said he was expecting to run into like he even made a deck change because he thought a lot of people were going to be running net damage protection.
Yeah, feedback from so.
But I think we take it a little more lightly over here, and not. So I mean, someone can bring that again. Someone could bring this deck to Worlds and really make an impact right now. I mean, these tier 2 decks compared to tier 1, I mean, there's not going to be that huge of a drop off. Like if we were ranking every individual deck down the road, but to say something is tier 2 to compare to tier 1, it's still a close line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not. I mean, we were talking about Hearthstone before. And Hearthstone's a lot less player skill dependent than Netrunner is, so it's so much more fluid here to rank these.
But yeah, you say great show in the Australians and Nordic 6-0 here. Jinteki Personal Evolution could be back with a vengeance on the boards. Going into an interesting bunch of decks, you might get a lot of people with the Wayland hate for these, saying Wayland is not viable right now. You have the Argus Security. This was an Argus Flatline deck. It was 12-4 at their nationals. In regionals, what's so tier 2 about Argus? What's stopping it from pushing into a tier 1? And why is it still kicking around here?
Yeah, look, it's the same as PE, really. I mean, this is Wayland PE. You've got 3 Archer. We like that. You've got your Walls of Static, Changeling, Enigma, Lotus Field just to lock servers down so you can actually score a little bit better. And you got Power Shutdown to deal with breakers as well, Wayland Personal Evolution. So it's kind of the same principle, I guess. It's just whichever you like playing better, maybe. But it's pretty much the same thing. You've got better ice here. You've got 3 Archer. We like that. You've got your Walls of Static, Changeling, Enigma, Lotus Field just to lock servers down so you can actually score a little bit better. And you got Power Shutdown to deal with breakers as well. So these 2 decks here, your rush decks, have a bit more focus on program trashing and being able to score out as well as killing the runner.
Are you if something like this is sitting at tier 2, are you in the boat saying that Wayland is broken right now, though?
I think they're certainly the weakest faction here.
So when you're crunching these numbers, are you seeing people running these Arguses and they're generally like maybe 1 or 2 in the floating near the top, but it just doesn't have that finish?
Yeah, it doesn't have that last. It doesn't have the massive. The thing, just the inevitability. So if you look at these decks compared to Butcher Shop, you cannot kill someone with this deck as easily as you can with Butcher Shop. You just can't. It's just not the same.
So that's and that's when the difference between a tier 2 and a tier 1 is that if you're really going for the kill and that's what you really want to do, there is a more efficient way to do that.
Yeah. The tier 1 is, I really don't like putting stuff in there unless it is everywhere. It wins tons of stuff. It's really, really powerful, over the top powerful.
On the other side of things, we have an Argus Rush deck sitting at tier 2. What have you noticed about the Rush style of Argus?
Well, Rush is a very strong playstyle at the moment because of the how popular Noise is. Because obviously Noise's late game is absolutely devastating, and the best way to deal with him is to rush out agendas early because sometimes you'll have hashtag Anarch problems and not be able to get in. So I think Argus is quite synergistic with the Rush style because you're spending all this effort to get into the server and then you have to deal with the meat damage or the tag. So I think that's the reason for that one there.
An interesting pick. Another Wayland sitting at tier 2. So it seems like Wayland is just, maybe 1 or 2 good cards away from breaking away here. But this is a Titan, Fast Advance, and Kill rolled into one. This is the first place at the DC and our Pro Circuit qualifier. What are you seeing with this identity and this deck style in general that's keeping it where it is?
So again, it's the rush thing. So you're seeing the Atlas train. Remember, that sort of was a thing when Ordering Chaos got spoiled. People talked about the Atlas train. So you can actually pull it off in this deck. But in general, I mean, getting Atlas with a counter on it for free is pretty damn strong. And it's the same principle. We've sort of got obviously we've got a bunch of Whaling decks sitting around this. This Argus, the two Argus decks and the Titan deck, they're all kind of the same principle, just approaching it from a different way.
Nice. HB Glacier is still obviously rocking the mid tier here. I don't think there's really much we can say about that. It does what it needs to do when it needs to do it. Red coat style versions that are going to tax you coming in, so use your play accordingly. And we got a Gagarin. So all modes of Wayland from big box sitting somewhere in the mid tier of our list here.
Yep.
Tier 3. This is now we get into a little more interesting one. This is a Cronus Rush Breaker Control.
This is a really interesting one.
So where did this one, where did this come about here, and how did this make the cut into tier 3? Because I know that usually, realistically, tier 3 could be packed with a lot more different versions of decks and stuff like that. But I like the fact that you've always drawn to a interesting build or something that just stands out, and this one definitely does. This is a Cronus protocol. This has got 4th in the New Zealand Nationals. What drew you to this one?
So this is a new thing that's popped up, because obviously this is the new ID from Universe of Tomorrow, and this has enabled another kind of rush style where we're looking at trying to really target the runner's recursion and breakers with that net damage and then score out. And that's a thing that Kronos can do, and it's something that you can't really do with anything else, which is really interesting. It's just a completely unique thing. You wouldn't be able to do this out of any other ID. So what we've seen so far, and I should say as well that I really think there's a strong deck here. I think there's at least a tier 2 deck in this shell somewhere, but we just need to figure out what it is.
So do you think mostly that's because of Worlds just being around the corner? This is the new one of the newest IDs to come out, so people haven't really gravitated towards it to flush it out. I think right now people are unfortunately with this game, someone will come out and say this is the best, and then most of those people will gravitate towards that. So right now you probably have a lot of people doing NEH, the Turtlebacks variant, and just practicing piloting with that. Repetition, take it to Worlds. Then something like this comes along, and as you've said, could be a strong build and could be something that we can see, but people just aren't giving it the time of day right now.
Yeah, look, I do think there's real potential, but I think it requires a different approach to deck building as well. So as you said, Worlds is coming up and people just want to figure out what's going to win. But I reckon there's something in here. Don't know where it is yet, but someone's going to figure it out, I reckon.
Well, I know Hollis talks very highly of playing against Kronos, just because of the fact that if net damage lands, it's so devastating.
Yeah, because usually net damage is like, okay.
Maybe fingers crossed they're not going to pull what I need. But this one here, taking a peek and actually targeting the damage card just can be devastating at the time. Can really put the runner behind a speed bump.
Yeah. So what you're seeing so far is you've got the Grail version, which is what I've got listed as the Rush version there, and then you have a more programmed trashy one, which you don't always have House of Knives in the Grail version because it seems to be a bit more focused on scoring out. So it almost overlaps with the RP Rush thing, but you're going for program destruction a bit more. And the other version, you've got stuff like Blacklist, Kronos Projects, Archer, Power Shutdown. You're just going really, really hard on program destruction.
Perfect. So that's that's our tier breakdown for Corporation. Scooching down to the runner, some of this stuff we can cover these tier 1s pretty quickly,
Yeah.
and get to the good ones. So runner, obviously, we're looking at a prepaid Kate. This, you've given the example here as the France national winner, and we saw Spags pilot this to some wins in the pro circuit. If you don't know how to run this, check out one of our last videos where we do a deck breakdown for the typical Kate shell. Going in, tier 1 again, we have Noise. Noise is going to obviously make a splash in the Worlds meta. Faust has done dominant things for Noise recently. I don't think there's a deck out there that he's not running Faust.
Yeah.
At least one of in there. But he just got such a boost with Street Peddler, with the adjusted chronotypes helping out the wild side, Faust. I don't know what more you can say about just those cards alone.
It's
Added
strong.
onto a typical Noise shell. Strong, yeah.
Well, this deck, I would say, is the one that single-handedly shapes the core meta the most.
Yeah, that's not even a bold statement. I think that's pretty easy to say without getting any argument against it. And the last one here is we have the wizard deck that Spags and Stephen Woolley came together and built. Two great minds. This is something that came out around the regional time, and a lot of people are still leaning towards wizard with the amount of horizontal asset style play that is out there right now.
Yeah.
So any of these ones here, tier 1, in my books, no doubt about, I agree with your points all across the board. Let's deep dive into tier 2. Tier 2, you have an Andy sucker.
Andy sucker's coming back.
At first, yeah, like you said, you want to do a double take here and check the date. Let's go scroll up. What's the date on this article? But it's. This comment says it all. It's classic, right? Like this. I've seen a lot of people on our Twitter feeds and stuff talking about Andy, going back to Andy. Dave Holland out in at the UK talking about Andy. Elad down in New York looking at Andy again. It just seems like people put her on the shelf, and now she's back. Now that the one of the biggest tournaments in Netrunner is coming up, you don't.
Well, I think it was the RP thing, because RP was the big. Andy Sucker couldn't fight RP, but now RP's kind of gone, and we have a million security testing and bank job targets. Andy's just good, It's always been a good deck, and I think the meta's really good for it.
Yeah, good points there. As one deck falls out of favor, something like paves way for decks that couldn't fight that deck to now take hold. You've got the DLR Valencia here sitting at tier 2. Valencia has always been that on the bubble kind of deck. I saw her win a couple regionals. People really pressed her. Why tier 2 though?
Just again, it's that combo-y kind of deck. It's 50 cards and it's a combo deck. That's always going to hold you back. There's always the chance that your deck's just completely going to fall apart and not function. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, it works for me there.
Yep.
DLR Leela. Leela is something that people have experimented with. Everyone in the UK knows about Leela. From Dave piloting her to multiple wins across every tier of Netrunner competitive play. You have anything to say about this deck? With the amount of wins, do you think she could be borderline tier 1? Or
I actually think all these three, this Andy Sucker DLR, these two DLR decks, they're all right on the bubble, I think. The only reason I'm putting the DLR ones down is because they just haven't been around that long, so it's really hard to tell what their long-term effect is going to be.
Geist makes an appearance here at the tier 2 level. He's I don't know. I've been in a love-hate relationship with this guy for a bit, but I have seen him piloted, all right. For the people that have stuck with him, anything interesting to say why Geist makes the list here?
Because you can get your Siphon spam off against, NEH and stuff and that kind of deck. And you can, if you're going up against HB or the more glaciery decks, typically these decks are packing 3 Crescentus, as well as Emergency Shutdown, so you can do quite a bit of a solid econ denial.
Just working against the current meta, huh?
Yeah, and if you can have a reasonable anti-kill as well, because you can trash stuff on the corpse turn to draw cards, so you've got sort of that as well. But again, it's a bit of a medical.
Gabe, interesting to see Gabe make a pop up here.
Yeah.
Partnering with Faust and Parasite style.
Super aggressive.
You said this is something that you've been poking around with. Do you think this is something that can go places?
Yeah, this deck's brilliant. So it's just old school, hyper aggressive Gabe. Your Parasite stuff, you use Faust to land siphons and get into servers, and you just do the classic Gabe thing where you just threaten everywhere at once until you win. Or until it's like turn 6 and you can't do it anymore. But it's just hyper aggressive Gabe. It's pretty good. It's got a good NEH matchup. You can beat RP if you play it right. Parasite I would consider Parasite to be an auto include in every single deck right now. I think if you don't have it, you're making a mistake. And Faust is a good card.
Regas Max and Valencia. I think those ones are pretty straightforward. We've seen a lot of people do very well with them. They have slowly fallen out of favor a tad, just with the popularity of Noise and Kate options at the tier 1 level. And I have seen Regas Max fall into trouble sometimes. So, I mean, I fully agree that it would be, tier 2. I don't know, some people call it that tier 1.5. It can do very well, but I have seen it have consistency issues.
It's the kind of thing where if you can make a mistake on turn 3 and not know it was a mistake until turn 11 and then you lose. It's just hard. I think that's why it's just hard.
Next one is another standard Leela from Cerebus. So this is Dave's pretty much endless waltz deck that he ran across the UK grabbing trophies with. Any reason why so why would this deck here not be a tier 1 deck?
It's consistency.
Yeah,
pretty much. Good, but it's not everyone's going to pull it off.
An interesting one here is the Faust Haley.
Yeah, this is popping up all over the place.
Finnish Nationals first place. So it's gaining. It's definitely gaining popularity. So where, anything specific about this one that stands out to you?
This one, it's just something that I don't know if it's this one in particular. I think because Faust is so good, we're seeing Faust all over the place, and this shell seems to be a pretty popular way to do it in Shaper. So I'm listing it for the moment, and we'll see if it's still around in a month or 2.
Yeah, some of these builds do pop in popularity. They eventually go so high, and then some people just can't figure out how to push them to the next level, and then something else comes out, and their attention drifts somewhere else. Tier 3, we have different variations of what Leela is doing right now. Some of the other Eater builds. The most dominant ones here obviously are Quetzal and a Stealth Haley. It was really strange. Stealth Haley and Quetzal, these decks, when Faust came out there, it was everywhere. I think everyone brought back Quetzal for a little bit, but none of them actually went anywhere. Stealth Haley was another deck that popped up, and she kind of burned out now.
It's just too slow, I think.
Yeah, speed reasons. You look at the other side of the coin here, and the top tier decks for Corporation are all fast scoring decks. And if you're spending your time trying to set up and get your stealth credits and things in place, as much as it's a strong deck, once you're set up, it just can't compete with the speed that a corporation can pump things out at right now.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I mean, I think that's the gist of it. Anything here that that wasn't covered that you'd like to add in?
Yeah. There's a couple of interesting things. Fisk came out, obviously, but Fisk has turned out to be pretty bad. We're seeing a lot of drug dealer in runner decks. Again, in Haley, quite a lot, which is quite interesting, actually. So that came out in Old Hollywood, but it's sort of more popular than ever now, which is interesting. And what else? Yeah, that's pretty much covers it, I think.
Perfect, man. Well, I think you know, these power ratings, we can keep them short and sweet, as you know, as they are and should be. The breaking down the top decks on each side for this month. Guys, thanks very much for your time. Thanks for the people that came out and watched. Thanks for the people that are listening. If you have any questions at all, feel free to drop them in the comments. And Miles has put his boxing gloves on and defend any of this stuff, teeth and nail.
Yeah, to get my Leela on.
Thanks a bunch, guys. Really appreciate your time.